tonight. This is Luke back here with yet another video, and thank you all for joining me yet again for yet another album versus album. And tonight we have two modern thrash classics going up against each other, both from the year 2008. We have the Toxic Holocaust and Overdose of Death going up against Warbringers debut album, War Without End. Now I want to give a shout out to both Joel Grind and John Cavell, as both of these guys are awesome, and I was fortunate enough to be able to meet John actually. And I want to say that he has a Discord, if you guys want to check it out. I'll leave the link to that down in the description below. Guy's fucking incredible. We had a good intellectual conversation with him. He's a smart guy. Now let's get into a biography and history of both of these bands, as I always do here on the channel. Now, Toxic Holocaust, as you guys know, if you haven't watched my full review of An Overdose of Death by Toxic Holocaust, you can go check that out. But Toxic Holocaust is an American thrash metal band from Portland, Oregon. Joel Grind founded Toxic Holocaust in 1999, and he originally wrote and recorded all of the band's music himself. And after a couple of demo releases, being Radiation Sickness in 1999, Critical Mass in 2002, he made his official debut album as Toxic Holocaust with Evil Never Dies, released in 2003. 2 years later, after some touring with a hired backing band, Grind released the second Toxic Holocaust album, Hell on Earth, in the year 2005, which once again he wrote and recorded all by himself. The album notably features cover art by Ed Repka, known for having created iconic covers for albums by Megadeth, Death, and others. Extensive touring followed, along with a recording contract with Relapse Records. In addition to releasing the third Toxic Holocaust album, An Overdose of Death, which is one of our competitors here tonight, Relapse reissued Evil Never Dies and Hell on Earth, and Toxic Holocaust also recorded and released a number of other recordings, including The Graveland, which is a 2009 EP, Conjuring Command, which released in 2011, and Chemistry of Consciousness in 2013. And in 2019, Joel Grind signed to Entertainment One and released Primal Future. 2019, later that year, tours were planned but halted due to the spread of the fucking bullshit scamdemic. Joel Grind, if you guys don't know, I'm going to give you a little back history on him as well. He's the frontman and main songwriter of Toxic Holocaust, and he now lives in Oregon. Joel began his musical career at a young age, first playing drums. His musical influence included bands such as Metallica, Bathory, Venom, and Sodom. As a teen, Joel ran a home recording and mixing business for local bands, and in 1999, he started Toxic Holocaust. Around this time, he picked up guitar. Joel now works as a music producer and has been involved in side projects other than Toxic Holocaust. He has released synth tracks as well as metal albums for his solo projects, War Ripper and the Yellow Goat Sessions. Grind is known for being social with his fans and can often be seen at the merchandise table before a Toxic Holocaust show. Now to Warbringer. Warbringer, which we got Total Fucking War playing in the background. Fucking amazing. But Warbringer is an American thrash band formed in 2004. Century Media Records signed Warbringer after seeing them at a local show in LA. Originally a Century Media rep was at the show to see another LA thrash metal band, but decided to sign Warbringer instead. Warbringer's second album, Waking in Nightmares, was released on May 19, 2009. The album reached number 14 on the Billboard Heat Seekers chart. Despite numerous lineup changes, Warbringer has released 6 full-length studio albums. Warbringer entered the studio with Bill Mortar, Slayer DRI, and Wasp as their producer and engineer, and in 2008, War Without End was released and ended up being Warbringer's debut. Warbringer was lined up for their first national tour opening for Exodus in January, followed by another stateside tour opening for Nile. Andy Lux decided to finish his senior year of high school before touring with the band and asked Ben Bennett to fill in on bass duties until he graduated. And the following June, after a tour in Europe with Napalm Death and Suffocation, Brian Bates informed the band he was not satisfied touring and would be leaving them to pursue other ambitions. The band issued a press release seeking a new drummer through YouTube auditions. Nick Ritter joined the band shortly after Ryan's departure while still an active member of the progressive metal outfit Prototype. That summer, Warbringer traveled to Europe, performing at a number of festivals, dates including Wacken Open Air, and resumed a heavy touring schedule, starting with Sworn Enemy. The band formed to the States and toured there in the fall, Fintroll followed by Overkill. And during the winter of 2008, Warbringer began writing new music with less than 3 months to write the record. The band was unfazed by the pressure with the experience from the road. Writing partnerships between the band were stronger and more focused than any time before in the career. Early in 2009, the band went to Sharkbite Studios in Oakland, California to record with Gary Holt from Exodus as producer and Zach Oren for mixing and mastering. The record was completed in just 12 days, and the band went on 2 more North American tours with Soilwork back-to-back with Creator and Exodus, and the tour lasted over 3.5 months. During the last half of the tour, Nick Ritter broke his arm and John Gentrim of Epication filled in for the band. In July, Warbringer embarked on a headlining tour of Europe and as a support for Onslaught and Testament in the UK. This was Ben Bennett's last tour, and in August he was replaced by the band's original bass player, Andy Laux, and the band continued touring heavily in the US, opening for Obituary, Vader, and a show with Slipknot even before the end of the year. Now, without further ado, guys, let's get into this battle, shall we? Let's start with Toxic Holocausts and Overdose of Death. You guys have already seen me review this album, but as I said before, I'll say it again. I'm pretty sure the first time you saw or heard an Overdose of Death, you thought it was cool, in the same way you might find a video game you started playing in 1996 and remember how cool that was, or how you would look at a postcard from a little fucked up French church and think, hey, that stained glass really kicks ass in any case. I don't really care what you thought about this album at first, because I'm telling you what I thought about it. And I reckon, like I said in my review, Blue Dogs with Yellow Eyes standing knee-deep in Toxic Overspill is a cool way to introduce an album that sounds like what would happen 5 seconds after the fact. When Wild Dogs kicks in and has those canning fuckers chase you through the ragged sprint of the next 36 minutes of the album. So basically, this is cool. This is a cool fucking start of the record, and it was a great way to start the album. And now we got Warbringer. On the other hand, it's already amusing to look back on the late 2000s thrash revival just a decade after its peak. Musical quality aside, it's ironic how a movement based on 80s thrash nostalgia, a time when most participants were either still wearing diapers or swimming in their father's testicles, is now in of itself nostalgic. An endless stream of violence wannabes decked out in jeans and high tops spread their music across the widest reaches of MySpace, just hoping to get noticed. But even the lucky ones snatched up by earache and Centromedia seemed to slink back into their corners after an album or two once everybody got the fun out of their system. With the possible acceptation of Havoc, no band from the movement kept their head above water quite like Warbringer did. They never got huge by any means, but they seemed to be supporting every major underground tour for a good stretch of time, and their headlining turnouts remain solid to this day. 2008's War Without End isn't as strong as what Warbringer would follow up with, especially in their later releases, but it shows a good young thrash band eager to become the hardy veterans that could get to that level at the very least. It was enough to get them on the road. Back to Toxic Holocaust. Sure, as I said, it isn't as if Joel Grind had to reinvent the wheel to make Toxic Holocaust sound like they do. Since the formula was fairly simple, slapping Slayer in the face with Venom until they lose their sharpness, then making things compositionally tighter by way of some mean time changes. That means the music is an unreconstructed, dirty brand of thrash metal that fans of Midnight, Abigail, Bulldozer, and some crossover bands like Municipal Waste ought to find appetizing in a straightforward, instinctive manner. And the appeal of this kind of music really isn't instinctive. And as I said in my review, there's nothing to get about an Overdose of Death. The music is fast, the riffs are catchy and diverse, but not skimping on heaviness at all. Vocals consistent, not distracting bullshit. And the bullshit's cut down to a minimum. Even the lineup tells you that there was no fucking around when making this. Grind proven sufficiently to play all instruments and provide vocals, all to satisfactory standard. Now, War Without End, on the other hand's influences are incredibly transparent, but it doesn't draw from the same pool as Warbringer's peers. There's certainly some Exodus and Testament on here, but there are far from cues being taken from the more extreme sounds of Creator and Demolition Hammer even. A few songs also sneak in some outliner metal inspirations, with At the Crack of Doom bordering on black metal and Born of the Ruins getting things going, with a good old-fashioned classic metal scream courtesy of Helter's James Rivera. Much of the band's uniqueness in the scene is attributed by vocalist John Cavell, in contrast to the Bailoff meets Zitro bastard children running amok at the time. Cavell's high-pitched shriek channels more Petzora with helpings of hardcore punk. It's beyond conventional thrash, and maybe a little much yelling for death metal, but it sure as hell didn't deserve the metalcore tags that he fucking got at the time. I mean, come on. Who could call this shit metalcore? You have to be a retard if you do. I mean, let's just be honest here. But like most young bands cutting a debut album, the sloppy musicianship on here may be its more enduring legacy. Some of the performances are a little rough. The drums are specifically stilted, but the main concerns lie in the production job. The trebly sound almost entirely pushes the bass out of the mix and only enhances the Line 6 friendly guitar tone, resulting in an overall processed sound. The more organic tone and improved playing on subsequent efforts are likely acknowledgments of this album's unbalance. On the other hand, there are plenty of outfits composed of a solitary member producing backwards-looking metal in an incredible, unpolished style. What makes Toxic Holocaust work so well, guys, is that the songs are also great, disappointing very rarely, barely missing a beat on this album. An Overdose of Death, fitting in 13 cuts, though. March from Hell is the only underdose of the album, in my opinion. Phoning the riffs and vocals in rather as well, proving the only song that slows down significantly. The structures of the song take as many cues from punk and crossover as from thrash or black and heavy metal, hammering through verses without much regard for timing or for too many repeated sections, preferring to conclude business in under just 3 minutes. Especially if a sodomous squeak thrash break can be squeezed into those limitations, the changes of pace on Endless Armageddon and War is Hell can be likened to the German Superb with Electrocution, one of the standouts of the classic Persecution Mania album. While In the Name of Science does something similar through about 20 years on Sodom's career, on a related note, the pure hooks of this riff and Future Shock are irresistible. Not to mention the more extreme elements thrown into Nuke the Cross and the Lord of the Wasteland. That said, there are some standout numbers on here. Shoot to Kill sets itself up as an obvious live crowd pleaser and succeeds thanks to its accessible structures, catchy chorus, and the most mosh-friendly breakdown since Indian song like Circling Genocide and Instruments of Torture. They also manage to be fun blasts through there moments, though there are moments where it's hard to tell if individual tracks run too long or if the whole album just blurs together stylistically. Overall, Warbringers Debut Album has its flaws, but it's endearing enough to still be enjoyable. It has the derivative tendencies of others in the thrash revival, but its more varied influences results in a more unique effort in comparison to the band's energy is like nothing compared to their gigs at the time. But there's enough here to see their potential. Waking into Nightmares and World Towards Asunder are safer recommendations, but this may be worth a listen to a late 2000 snapshot. I mean, I would personally recommend it because, I mean, it's a debut album, and honestly, for most modern thrash, it's a great fucking debut, and it's not a bad album at all. And with Toxic Holocaust here, on the other hand, the only issue that fans of lo-fi, black, and thrash might run up against is the punk overtones that control a few tracks here. There is certainly an element of discharge running through some of the songs, as I said, not least feedback button distortion, which despite opening with pretty metallic riffing, it has softer motives thrown in that might baffle those who were thrilled at the attack of the more vicious tracks. However, considering that the influence is subtle other than on a couple of tracks, it provides a variation on the stripped-down thrashing of other songs, helpfully keeping things from becoming too repetitive or predictable. For all that grind does to keep things interesting throughout, it would have been preferable to trim down the album just a little bit further, especially since War as Hell is just a track redone from an earlier release. I mean, but there are a couple of semi-rips lurking in the back of a few songs. Nevertheless, these are minor problems when contemplating it, and I am just nitpicking. An Overdose of Death is a blast almost from start to finish, and it should provide satisfaction for anyone hungry for a dose, or maybe an overdose, if you will, of good thrashy fun. Overall, both of these albums are amazing, and I'm sitting here just trying to think which one outdoes the other. Like, fuck, it's hard to choose. For the final ranking, I think I'm going to give Warbringer an 8 out of 10 because it does have flaws, just as Toxic Holocaust does as well, but it's amazing for a debut thrash metal album, especially being modern. And I think I'm going to give Toxic Holocaust a 9 out of 10. So yes, Toxic Holocaust takes the win for this one, but only by a slight bit. Warbringer's Debut is just as good, and I recommend you guys check out both of these bands and albums if you have not already. And alright guys, that's going to wrap it up for this battle. An Overdose of Death comes out being the winner for this one, but check out both of these amazing modern thrash metal albums. They both kick ass. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you do, leave a like, and make sure to hit subscribe. I mean, hey, if you love metal fucking content, I'm going to be getting to some gaming content here as well. So if you enjoyed and liked what you saw, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Me and Chaos are going to be doing podcasts. I don't know. We might have a podcast up by the time you're watching this. I'm not too sure. The link to Cavill's Discord, once again, John Cavill's Discord will be down in the description, as well as me and Chaos's. So if you want to check it out, the links are all down in the description. And if you'd like to see me review or cover anything else on the channel, leave them down in the comments below, and I'll make sure to have a look at them. Alright guys, that is going to be it for tonight. I hope you all take care, and don't forget to have a fucking good one.